What is up, guys? Kolst here. So Blizzcon just happened, a lot of new cards got announced, so I want to make this video. Let's just talk about it. Gonna go through the cards, kind of talk a little bit about the new mechanics that are involved, how it's gonna relate to the game modes, both constructed and arena. Some of these cards aren't really going, because some of these cards probably aren't going to be in arena, so we'll get into the reasons for that. But before we get into all that, if you haven't seen who I am yet, I'm Kolst. I tend to stream mostly Arena, but I also have played Constructed a bit in the past. So I'm going to talk a bit about how these cards relate to both of those game modes. Of course, don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you want to see more of this kind of content. Anyway, let's get right into it. So the first group of cards I'm going to talk about is the new hero cards I mentioned. So these are all called Galakrond. And of the classes that are in the League of Evil, each one will have its own Galakrond hero card.
And the 5 evil classes are Rogue, Warrior, Shaman, Warlock, and Priest.
Oh, and by the way, all 5 Galakrond hero cards are being added to everyone's account as long as you log into the game within the first 90 days of the expansion. And the Galakrond card for 3 of those 5 classes were revealed at BlizzCon. The Priest one, the Rogue one, and the Warlock one. So the hero card by itself works like any other hero card. It has a battle cry, so the Priest one destroys a random enemy minion. The Rogue one, battle cry, draw a card. Warlock, summon one random demon. But they also have text about the new keyword, which is invoke. And this was confusing to me. It took me a long time reading on it on the internet to figure out exactly what it meant, because I didn't watch the video. But basically, as it mentioned, you can invoke the hero twice to upgrade it, and that will make it have a much more powerful effect. But also the hero card will have its hero power, and that's what the invoke will relate to. Invoke basically means as long as the hero card is in your deck, which it always would be, you would imagine, right? It activates the hero power of the Galakrond. So for example, the rogue hero power is add a lackey to your hand. Oh, by the way, one thing I should mention, which will be relevant for rogues especially, with their Galakrond hero power generating lackeys, there is one new lackey being added with this set, and it's a 1 mana 1/1, of course. Battlecry, discover a dragon. And dragons are typically pretty good, especially if you're playing a dragon deck, so this is a pretty good lackey, I would say. And the Priest Galakrond's hero power is to add a random Priest minion to your hand. The Warlock hero power is add 2 1/1s to your hand. So each Galakrond can be upgraded twice. Each upgrade requires 2 invokes. And the first upgrade is a pretty mild upgrade. So for example, the Priest Galakrond, you go from 1 random enemy minion being destroyed to 2. But the third upgrade is amazingly powerful. You suddenly go to 4 enemy minions and you equip a 5/2 claw. All of the fully upgraded Galakronds equip a 5/2 claw, so ideally you would be able to invoke 4 times. You'll get by far the strongest payoff from the battle cry of the hero card. And by the way, after you played the card, future invokes will still trigger the hero power. And the hero power is a standard 2 mana hero power that after you've played the Galakrond you can also use. And so that'll lead to the next natural question. Well, how do you invoke Galakrond? Well, there are certain cards being put into the game which have the invoke text on them, which will trigger the invoke effect. So in general, I have to say, the way that Galakronds work draws a lot of similarities to how Cthulhu worked back in the day. Cthulhu was also activated by specific cards that would buff and interact with Cthulhu. But one difference here is that it looks like there is a much more significant cost on the card to actually having the invoke effect, as in the cards are quite a bit weaker, because you're not only getting the text on the card, but you're also getting the hero power from the Galakrond. So I'll go by class. Let's start with the rogue ones. So far for rogue, they've announced 2 different invoke cards. One is Praise Galakrond, which is 1 mana, give a minion +1 attack, so almost nothing, but you get an invoke. I think this will actually be one of the better ones because it's so cheap. And since you're also getting an add a lackey to your hand, it's actually a pretty good effect. The other one is Seal Fate, which is basically backstab, except it's 3 mana, deal 3. This one is quite an expensive invoke. Moving on to Warlock, they've also announced 2. The first one is Fiendish Rites, which is 3 mana, give your minions +1 attack. And the other is Dragonblight Cultist, which is a 1 mana 1/1 battle cry, gain +1 attack for each other friendly minion. So both of these work quite well with the invoke of the Warlock hero power, making them, I think, a bit better than they look initially, as the Warlock hero power is to summon 2 1/1s. So the Cultist, at the least, you're getting, for 3 mana, you're getting a 3/1 and 2 1/1s, which is actually, it's okay. And Phoenix Rites will also synergize with those 1/1s to summon 2 2/1s in addition to buffing the rest of your board. And for Priest, they've only announced one so far, but it's Time Rip, which I think is possibly the best one because it's 5 mana, unconditional, destroy a minion. And you also get the Priest one, which is add a random Priest minion to your hand. So 5 mana, assassinate plus draw a card. That's pretty good. In addition, so far they've announced 2 neutral invoke cards, and these are admittedly quite a bit weaker. There's a 4 mana 2/2 rush with the Battlecry invoke, it's pretty weak, but if you need an invoke, it might be worth it to you, right? And the other one is Shield of Galakron, which is a 5 mana 4/5 taunt, which I think is probably a little bit better, but also it's a pretty weak card. But given that you get the hero power effect off too, which is either 2 1/1s or drawing a lack hero card, it's actually, it's pretty good. Definitely better than the Devoted Maniac. And in addition to these, they've also announced 3 cards which interact with the invoke. All 3 of them have the text of Battlecry. If you've invoked twice, then you get a powerful effect. For Priest, you have Fate Weaver. For Warlock, you have Veiled Worshipper. And for Rogue, you have Umbral Skulker. So for the first 2, these are actually minions that have a decent stat line already. The Fate Weaver is a 4 mana 3/6, and the Veiled Worshipper is a 4 mana 5/4. So passable, right? So you could play them on curve if you really needed to, but you really want to get the Battlecry effect. As the Fate Weaver, reduce the cost of all cards in your hand by 1. It's a pretty amazing effect, especially if you're trying to do some kind of combo. And the Veiled Worshipper, draw 3 cards. That's for free. That's pretty good. The Umbral Skulker has a bit of a weaker stat line, but also it just adds 3 coins to your hand. So essentially that gives you options for combo activation, essentially getting a 1 mana 3/3 kind of. So, it's good.
And it can allow you to potentially have a much stronger turn than you otherwise would be able to.
So as I mentioned in the beginning, there's definitely some powerful effects here, but I don't want to make too early of a judgment on any of these cards because they're really going to be a package deal. We're going to have to see what other cards become available and really what kind of decks you can build to really see whether or not these cards are going to be viable and constructed. And most likely these cards simply won't be in Arena, so there's nothing to talk about there. So with that, let's move on to the next group of cards, and we're going to start getting into the flavor of the expansion, the other flavor of the expansion, all the dragons. So as is a bit familiar to anyone that's been playing Hearthstone for a few years, they're bringing back the common dragon text of if you're holding a dragon. So these are cards that typically would be underpowered, but actually in these expansion, as we'll get into, a lot of them are decent cards already, and then if you have a dragon, they gain just an additional value, so they become just absolutely broken cards. So with that, we'll start out about talking about the breath cards. So for 5 different classes, I think they announced there will be one for all 9 classes, but they've announced 5 so far. There's a breath card, which is a spell. So the first one is Hunter Spell, Corrosive Breath, which is 2 mana, deal 3 to a minion. Fine card already. And if you're holding a dragon, it also hits the enemy hero. This reminds me just a little bit of Cobra Shot, which is actually a 5 mana card. So this is it's a bit of a weak 5 mana card, but still this is like a, at least a 4 mana effect for 2 mana. It's a very good card. And if you're trying to go face like Hunter usually is, it's a good card. It will see play if dragon decks are playable. And for Arena, 2 mana deal 3 is a pretty good card already. And next is Candle Breath, which starts out as a 6 mana, draw 3 cards, which for constructed is definitely a bit weak. For Arena, it's a little bit playable, but if you have a dragon, the cost of this card reduces down to 3, which for both game modes is absolutely a very strong card. So you will be seeing this card as well. Moving on, next we have Sand Breath, which again reminds us very well of an existing card, Divine Strength, which is just 1 mana, give a minion +1/+2. But if you're holding a dragon, it also gives Divine Shield, which would be another 1 mana card in itself. So this is like 2 1 mana cards in one. Very strong card. So the same explanation as the others. You'll definitely see it in constructed if this type of deck is viable, and in Arena you will pick this card almost every time. The next one, I have to say, I'm a bit surprised that they're actually printing because it's a 2-mana wild growth, which also draws a card. To have the wild growth effect, you do need to actually have the dragon in hand, though. By default, it's just draw a card, but this is a very powerful effect, and they nerfed wild growth for a reason, so it's a bit surprising to see it come back. But this effect has the sheer power level that this could be a really big enabler for that kind of a strategy. I think it's worth mentioning, you can play this card on 2, straight into Twilight Drake on 3. That's gonna be good. And it'd probably actually be a better card in Constructed than Arena, but I mean, there's no real downside to this card in Arena either, so you might as well pick it if you see it, unless it's up against something really strong. And last but not least, possibly the strongest Arena card here is Lightning Breath. By default, a 3 mana deal 4 damage to a minion, which is, it's a good Arena card. Not too much of a Constructed card though, but if you're holding a dragon, it also deals the damage to its neighbors. So you're looking at something which is going to often be a 3 mana Flame Strike. This card is, I don't think I have to explain how good that card is going to be. No, there actually was one more Breath card announced slightly later, and that is the Warrior one, which is Molten Breath. 4 mana deal 5 to a minion, and if you're holding a dragon, gain 5 armor. This one I have to say is, it's a good card. Don't get me wrong, but it's not quite at the power level of the others, but it's definitely, if you're playing Dragon Warrior, this will be an auto include, and for Arena 2, this is a good card, so you'll pick it. Again, for all these cards, they're very, very strong cards if you have dragons. And they're good enough cards that even if you don't have dragons or you don't have dragons yet, you could still pick it in Arena. So you're going to be seeing a lot of these cards in both game modes. But how much you see them in Constructed will be really depend on how good dragon decks are. So let's get into some of the dragon cards that have been printed, as these are really going to be the backbone of any dragon deck for obvious reasons. And it's worth noting, one card we already talked about, the Fate Weaver, that was a dragon, so that's going to be one card that Priest will have access to. A 4 mana 3/6, good stat line for a dragon deck, typically. It's going to be a good card. And there's definitely a possibility that, since Fate Weaver was also an invoke card, you might see some synergy between a combination of a dragon and Galakrond deck, so that'll be something to look out for. Let's go ahead and start out talking about the neutral dragons, because every class will have access to those. So there's 2 have been printed so far, and these are both going to be absolutely insane Arena cards. For Constructed, that's a bit more debatable, but let's get into it. First one is Evasive Draconid. This is a 7 mana 7/7 taunt with cannot be targeted. So I'm not sure for Constructed, that might just not be quite good enough, but it's going to depend on, you're going to need some kind of dragons to build a dragon deck, right? And Big Minion, at least it has taunt. It might just fill the role you need it to, right? For Arena, this card has pretty much everything you could ever want in a big drop. It's a big card, it has taunt, it can't be targeted, so it can't even get removed for the most part. This card's going to be very, very good. Now we're talking about Arena, like a 7 mana 5/9 taunt is a good card, so this is a great card. The second card they've announced for neutral dragons is absolutely broken for Arena. This is Twin Tyrant. It is an 8 mana 4/10 battle cry, basically cast 2 flame cannons. Deal 4 damage to 2 random enemies.
But it's worth noting that the 2 flame cannons can't hit the same target, so think of it like a multi-shot.
The only drawback for Arena here is that it's a big minion that doesn't have taunt, but I think the double initiative removal attached to its battle cry is well worth that. And it's also a huge body, which is relevant in Arena. So this card is insane for Arena. Now for Constructed, we'll see. I'm not sure. You obviously don't tend to want a bunch of big minions at this cost, but again, it has a very powerful battle cry effect, so you might be able to get away with it. And a 4/10 isn't going to be as relevant just because it's a little slow. 4 damage isn't a lot of damage, but still, there's a fair chance this is going to be one of the best dragons available to you, so you'll probably see it at least a little bit. And let's move on to the class cards. I'm going to go class by class. Let's start with Druid, because they've had 2 announced. The first one is Emerald Explorer, which is a 6 mana 4/8 taunt, which, like, for an Arena card, that would already be an amazing card. But it also has Battlecry, Discover a Dragon. So typically, dragon decks love to have taunts. I think this is going to be possibly one of the best, if not the best, dragon card in the entire game. You will definitely see this card, and this will, again, be probably an enabling card for Dragon Druid. The other dragon card that has been announced for Druid is a legendary, Ysera Unleashed, which is interesting. It's a same stat line as Ysera, 9 mana, 4/12, not so good, obviously. But its battle cry is to shuffle 7 Dream Portals into your deck. What is a Dream Portal, you might ask? Well, when you draw a Dream Portal, summon a random dragon. So we'll obviously have to go through and see how good the random dragon is, but typically dragons are pretty large cards, right? So there's going to be some RNG there. There's draw RNG and also the generation RNG. But it's going to be a card where you're going to want to play it and then you're going to want to have some kind of card draw to actually find the portals. And it's going to be a win condition. You'd expect probably to pretty reliably get after a couple turns, but it is relatively slow. So there's going to have to be decks built around it. So we're going to have to wait to see what other cards are available to Druid to see if you think you can get away with this kind of a win condition or not. Next, we'll talk about the 2 common dragons. Both of these are very similar to a previously existing card in the game. So first one is the Mage one, Azure Explorer, which is a 4 mana 2/3, not too good, but it also has spell damage +2 and Battlecry Discover a Dragon. Poor Evolved Kobold, man. Well, I think this card will definitely see play. There's not too much. 4 mana is enough that, you can't combo this with Flame Strike or something. You could theoretically combo with Blizzard on turn 10, but I think the main way you would want to use it would be to be with Arcane Explosion, so that's a thing we might see, we might not, who knows.
By the way, the way +2 damage with Evolved Kobold was actually used in Constructed in the past was to use it with burst combos with Ice Lance, but that doesn't exist anymore outside Wild, so I'm sure the Wild people have fun with that one.
The other one is Primordial Explorer, which is available to Hunter. It's a 3 mana 2/3 poisonous. That one's familiar too. Interesting. But it also has Battlecry Discover a Dragon, so more power creeping. This is, I think, safe to say, this will be a good card. You will see this card if Hunter is playable. This card's strong enough. You might even see it not even in a dragon deck. This is just a good card. Now, the other 3 dragons that they've announced are all legendaries. Let's start again with the Mage one. Malagos, Aspect of Magic. The 5 mana 2/8, which is obviously not too good, but is if you're holding a dragon, discover an upgraded mage spell. I believe these are all spells that come from the classic basic set, but they haven't shown like everything you can get, but typically you're going to get a card which is either upgraded in its effect or lowered in its mana cost. So for example, you might get an Arcane Intellect, which is 3 mana, draw 4 instead of 2. You might get a Fireball that deals 8 damage. You might get a Polymorph that costs only 1. You might get a Frost Nova that costs only 1. These are the kind of cards you're going to get. I think I've also seen Flame Strike deal 8 damage to everything. There's some powerful cards there. So you're paying a bit of a cost up front, but you're getting a completely broken card. And there's going to be some RNG there, but if you're going to be able to play Dragon Mage, you're going to be able to play this card. The next one is the Warrior card, which is Deathwing Mad Aspect. Unlike other Deathwings, this one only costs 8, but it is a 12/12. So the battle cry on this card is attack all other minions. So the one thing, I'm not sure exactly how this card works in if it's, I'm assuming it attacks your opponent's board first and then attacks your own board, but I don't know that, and that's going to definitely be relevant to its power level, exactly how it works there. But assuming that it does attack your opponent's board first, you're going to assume that this thing is going to at least be an 8 mana one-sided Twisting Nether, and that seems like a really good card to me. I don't know. Warrior obviously does have other options available to them like Brawl, but I think this card will hold up. Because I've seen a lot of people kind of crapping on this card, but I think it's a bit unwarranted, because I want to point out to you the stat lines of a lot of these other dragon cards we've been looking at, and these are all a lot of minions that have low attack, high health. So if your opponent just has like 1 or 2 of these dragons, it'll kill these 2 dragons and then also leave something behind like a 12/5 or something that if they don't kill it, they're just going to lose the game immediately. So I think this card is going to be good. How good, we'll have to see though. But I'm willing to bet that it will see play unless Warrior is completely unplayable. And the last dragon card announced so far is Waxadread, which is a 5 mana 7/5 with a Death Rattle to shuffle a candle in your opponent's deck, which basically just resummons the Waxadread. So this is, for Arena, this card is absolutely broken. For Constructed, I think it's also pretty broken. It's an amazing card, especially for Dragon decks, but this is just a good card. There's some RNG attached to it, but, you know, if you don't expect to be able to draw, you know, if it's not the right meta for it, if there's a lot of aggro, you might not be able to play this card, but I think you will see this card. Next, there was one more dragon announced, which was the Paladin Dragon, which has gotten a lot of discussion, which is Dormu the Timeless. It's a 4-mana 8/8 with very interesting text, which is Battlecry, set each player to 10 mana crystals. So there was a lot of discussion. People were not clear on exactly how this card would work. Do you get those 10 mana crystals immediately? I think the obvious answer is no, because that card would be absolutely broken. It would be the best card they've ever printed by far if that was the case. You would get 14 mana on turn 4 that your opponent would only have 10 mana to respond to. That'd be absolutely insane. So I knew there was no way that was going to be the case, and Blizzard since confirmed, no, that's not the case. It's not going to impact the number of mana crystals you have available to you on the turn you play it. So we'll ramp you, but your opponent is going to have 10 mana to respond to you before you do. So basically that's going to be a huge drawback, but the upside of it is you do get to get an 8/8 for only 4 mana. So I don't know. This card, to me, I'd say is a little dicey, but there definitely could be situations where you could make it work. So we will have to see for this one. Of course, one thing to note, especially for Arena, is that you can just wait until both players have 10 mana anyway, and then you just get a 4-mana 8/8 with no Battlecry. So it's definitely not a bad card, it's just, yeah, you have to be careful with it, right? Okay, so let's talk about, there is one other type of mechanic, one more keyword, which has been added in this expansion, and it is side quest. So side quests are kind of like quests. They operate in the same way, except they are not legendaries, so you can put 2 in your deck if you want to. But also, they do not start automatically in your opening hand. But they generally do work the same way as a quest. So there have been 2 announced so far. The mage one is Learn Draconic, which is spend 8 mana on spells. Of course, you have to spend it after you've played the side quest. And then the reward is a 6/6 dragon. The hunter one is side quest, use your hero power 3 times and get 3 leper gnomes. So 3 1/1s that deal another 6 damage to your opponent's face. So both these cards are, basically the idea is you're going to have to make a bit of a investment in playing the 1 mana up front, but you'll get pretty significant payoff in a reasonable amount of time later. So these cards are very powerful, but it's going to be a bit mana dependent on whether can a hunter be playing that kind of style where they just want to go face with leper gnomes, for example. And is the mana investment up front going to be too punishing to play these cards? But otherwise, these cards, they definitely have potential. 1 mana 6/6 or 1 mana deal 6 damage to the enemy hero. These are really good cards. There's definitely potential for these. So the last group of cards I have to talk about is not built around a mechanic, but these are all hunter cards that are built around the hero power. So this is obviously going to be an example of a type of deck that you might have access to. And there are 3 of these hunter cards that they've announced which interact with the hero power. The first one is a 1 mana 1/3 Dwarven Shapeshooter, which is your hero power can target minions. So you play this thing on 1, and like for Arena, for example, your opponent responds with a 3/2. You just kill it. They respond with a 2/3. You hero power it, and then you trade and you kill it, and you're left with the 1/1. So this is a very good card. Previously, there was a 2 mana 2/3 with the same effect, which was also a very good card, but I think this one is actually probably a bit better. So it's a good card. The next one is Phase Stalker, which is a 2 mana 2/3. After you use a hero power, cast a secret from your deck. So if you're using targeted hero powers and also casting a secret, this is a crazy amount of value. But even just if you're using your hero power normally, you just deal 2 damage face, and then you also pull a secret out of your deck and play it, that's already a good effect because you're essentially drawing a card and playing a 2 mana card. So that's good, and also you're removing the bad draw from your deck, because typically you'd rather be drawing stuff that's not secrets, so this is a very good effect. The 2 mana 2/3 is significant upside. And the last one is possibly the strongest of all, Dragonbane. This is a legendary 4 mana 3/5. After you use your hero power, deal 5 damage to a random enemy. So the way that is written, it should mean that it could deal the damage to a minion or to the face, which means if your opponent doesn't have any minions, it's an extra 5 damage guaranteed to their face. If you're trying to hero power a lot, this is a good card. You use this with the side quest too, you can get to 30 damage very, very quickly. Of course, there may be healing available, but we'll see. But this is definitely a very strong card. It's kind of like a mini Ragnaros. You could look at it as like a 6 mana 3/5 deal 5 to an enemy. Compared to Ragnaros, it's going to see play. The only drawback relatively would be you have to spend the 2 mana every turn, but hunters want to do that. Easy smork. And I believe there's just one card I haven't talked about yet, and last but definitely not least is Dragon's Horde, which is a rogue card. Discover 1 mana, discover a legendary minion from another class. So we've been seeing a fair number of pretty strong legendaries in this set. There's gonna be a lot of things you can get. You wouldn't really be able to pull anything specifically with this, but odds are you can get something good. 1 mana discovers are typically pretty playable cards. This card might not be in every deck, but it's definitely gonna be in every fun deck. And it's gonna be a totally playable arena card. So in arena, you will definitely be seeing this card. So this will be something to get used to. Well, actually, there is one more legendary that they announced that I didn't talk about, and it's a 9 mana 5/5 Sathrovar. I believe this was actually given to everyone that had a BlizzCon virtual ticket. It's obviously a weak body, but choose a friendly minion, add a copy of it to your hand, deck, and battlefield. So you just get a copy. If you have a huge minion, you get a copy of it on the battlefield. That's already an incredibly valuable effect. But you also get to add it to your hand and deck. There's going to be a lot of like crazy combos you can pull off with this card. It's going to be interesting. And in arena, this is going to be a card you're going to lose to sometimes. Leave up 1 big minion and it's going to happen. But again, like it's a legendary, you won't see it that much, but you will see it. So we'll see. But anyway, that's going to be it for me today. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more of this kind of content, and also comment to see what do you guys think about this set. What's your favorite card? What are you looking forward to? Anything like that. What are you thinking about just in general in life? I don't know. Whatever you want to talk about. But anyway, it's been fun as always. See you guys next time.